The Australian beef industry poses a real threat to the Great Barrier Reef and its ecosystems. Overgrazing and land clearing for beef cattle in catchment areas surrounding the Great Barrier Reef has resulted in widespread soil erosion and the associated nutrients and sediment entering the Great Barrier Reef through various waterways. The sediment mainly flows through the Burdekin and Fitzroy catchment areas as they are predominantly used for beef cattle grazing. 75% of the average fine sediment load that has been drained into the Great Barrier Reef originates from the Fitzroy and Burdekin river basins. Once washed into the reef, sediment can result in a variety of ecological changes, such as a decline in coral quantity and quality. Majority of the sediment that enters the Great Barrier Reef is transported down rivers and streams during wet seasons or after flooding. The Wilderness Society found that 575,291 hectares have been cleared in surrounding areas of the Great Barrier Reef for cattle grazing. These areas that are being occupied by grazing cattle for beef production risk the possibility of overgrazing in these areas, which leads to the land being vulnerable to erosion. Erosion then leads to soil becoming sediment, which is carried to the Great Barrier Reef via river and streams as runoff. Sediment loads in the Great Barrier Reef is currently sitting at over 5 times its natural levels. In the last 2 centuries, river loads of suspended solids, nutrients and pesticides entering the Great Barrier Reef has increased significantly, and conditions of the reef have shown an overall decline, with coral cover down 50% for the entire Great Barrier Reef in the last 27 years alone. Suspended sediment in the water reduces the quality and quantity of light the coral and plants have access to, which they need to grow. In some cases, sediment can also smother the coral. Intertidal seagrass meadows are also in decline due to a limitation of nutrients caused by suspended sediment. Fine sediment has also been shown to affect the reproductive cycle of coral and early developmental stages of coral and some species of fish. Furthermore, coral recruitment and diversity is also affected as other organisms fight for resources and space in the reef. The Great Barrier Reef is the world's largest reef system and is one of Australia's World Heritage Properties and is therefore protected under the Federal Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act of 1999. Many other federal, state and local government laws and policies assist in protecting the Great Barrier Reef. Unfortunately, the current policies in place are not yielding promising results. The decline of the Great Barrier Reef and its health has serious implications for the economy, with industries such as tourism and fishing taking a hit. The declining health of the Great Barrier Reef makes it a less attractive destination for tourism and recreation, and activities involving the reef such as fishing will be compromised due to the changing condition of the Great Barrier Reef's value as a tourism destination. I know helping the Great Barrier Reef may seem like a difficult mission for you, being that it is such a large, unique and complex ecosystem. But we can still do our part. You can offer your support to the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority to continue to advocate for the reef. The authority has been subject to backlash over the last few years, but needs the support of individuals to empower them to fight for the reef. It is independent groups like the authority that can advocate for tighter controls on agriculture for all catchment areas that surround the Great Barrier Reef and fight for the reef industry to do more to stop sediment and pollutants entering the reef.